We're at the IAS meeting with Brent Williams from Columbia University. We appreciate you taking the time. Just concluded a press conference on, among other things, the Caprisa study with Salim Kareem. And we appreciate you taking the time to do, you're the leg man. You do a lot of the work on the actual work on the studies. And I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of get us into the grips of what it's like to put that study together and just tell us about it. Give us the background on it.
So we were studying 119 women from the Caprisa 2004 tenofovir gel trial. And in that study, we found that women with genital inflammation were more susceptible to HIV acquisition. And we were really interested in what was causing that genital inflammation. And we looked at various candidates, including sexually transmitted infections, and found that those sexually transmitted infections didn't account for the majority of the genital inflammation in these women. So as a result, we ended up coming up with a hypothesis that perhaps the vaginal microbiome, or the bacteria that inhabit women's vaginal tracts. These are natural bacteria. Yes, women naturally have a microbiome, or a consortium of bacteria that inhabits their vaginal tract. And in particular, the healthy vaginal tract of women is dominated by bacteria called lactobacillus. In this study, we used high-throughput sequencing, which is a method that allows us to look at millions of bacterial sequences from these women. And what we found was that women who were colonized with a particular bacteria called Prevotella bivia were significantly associated with having higher levels of inflammation, and were also had higher risk of HIV acquisition.
Now, I'm trying to get this right here, because I think I heard Salim talking about 300 types of bacteria. Is that about what it is?
We actually detected over 1,000 bacterial taxa within these women across all of these populations. But there are, in general, women may have about 50 different bacteria inhabiting the vaginal in one person.
I get you.
But it varies from person to person, and as I said, the healthy vaginal flora should be dominated by lactobacillus.
So is there a way we can use this knowledge in a fashion that would be useful, or because, I mean, this seems like a lot of work to go to for every person?
Well, I think once you start to identify these risk factors and identify the mechanisms by which bacteria may be mediating this increased susceptibility, you can start to think about how you can target those factors. And in this case, certainly we can start to think about whether vaginal probiotics may be one method by which we could start to normalize the vaginal microbiome of women who are colonized with this type of bacteria. Or even more specifically, we could target this bacteria with vaccines, of which would require a great deal of development, and there's obviously a great deal more research that needs to be done to understand how we can use this finding to really start to impact women's lives and to
because it would be good for that subpopulation and that live with that bacteria.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Where do we go from here? Are you going to be doing more studies and to?
Certainly, we'll be doing more mechanistic studies to try to understand the mechanisms by which this bacteria is inducing inflammation, whether there are downstream targets of inflammation that we may be able to also target to inhibit the immune response, which is most likely what is driving the increased susceptibility or vulnerability to HIV.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. It seems interesting, and it seems worthy of looking into the future and learning more about this subject.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, Brent.